Hi, everybody. It is June 3rd, 2026, and today we're covering all of the big news. Today, the House passed the War Resolutions Act, which essentially compels Donald Trump to really direct the end of the war in Iran. And at the same time, we also have a lot of other big news. We have the war with Russia and Ukraine. We also have the strikes on Kuwait, which took place overnight. Again, these were strikes from the Iranians that took place on U.S. bases and then the Kuwait International Airport. So also some big stories there. And then we're also going to be covering the global markets, oil prices. We're going to be covering the coin market cap, everything that's happening with crypto. And then, of course, with gold and all of it. So be sure to like, share, comment, subscribe if you enjoy the information, if you enjoy everything that I've been putting out. Also, be sure to check out our YouTube shorts on our channel, Ecker Geopolitics. And be sure to follow that. Support me on Substack if you're interested. And at the end of the day, that's all I have for the beginning of this intro. So let's get right into the news. So again, this was a very big story. This is the House that just passed the War Powers Resolution Act. So pretty big. So let's take a look at this real quick.
On this vote, the yeas and the nays were 208. The concurrent resolution is adopted.
215 to 208. So Congress is cheering because this is essentially going to compel Donald Trump to end the war, or at least try to end the war.
Without objection, the motion to reconsider is laid on the table.
So the reason this is such a big deal is that, again, this basically compels Donald Trump to end the war. So again, when we really look at this, essentially looking at the context, it features the C-SPAN clip from the U.S. House chamber erupting in cheers after passing the H-Con Resolution 86, a war powers resolution directing President Trump to end U.S. military involvement in the Iran conflict within 30 days unless Congress authorizes continuation. The vote tally showed 215 to 208 passage with near unanimous Democratic support and 211 yeas, plus 4 Republican crossing party lines following multiple prior narrow failures or delays on similar Iran measures earlier in 2026. So this is very big. Again, everybody's waiting for this war to end. I would say most people are in America. What do you think? Do you think the Iran war should end, or do you think that Trump is right? Do you think Iran can never have a nuclear weapon? Or do you agree with the Israelis and Donald Trump and Netanyahu, where they say the Iranians can never have a nuclear program or nuclear enrichment? Or do you believe that a lot of that is false and that really the bigger threat perhaps could be Israel, who is not telling us much about their nuclear program? And again, meanwhile, there's a lot of other big news happening there as well. Okay, so when we look at this story, we have to understand that this is pretty big news. Okay, so take a look at this article. Israel strikes and kills 9 in Lebanon as Hezbollah fires rockets over the border. This was literally not too long ago. So again, when we update this, again, I pulled that up just about an hour ago. This article was just released on BBC, again, 2 hours ago now. So as I was prepping for the stream, I saw this story come out. Israel strikes killed at least 9 people in southern Lebanon Wednesday, authorities said, as the Iran-backed armed group Hezbollah said it fired rockets into northern Israel. Lebanon's health ministry said that the dead included 2 paramedics whose ambulance was hit in a strike in the southern Cherhar area. A car was also struck just south of the capital, Beirut. Meanwhile, Israel's military said it intercepted a drone and 2 projectiles that crossed the border. Hezbollah said it targeted a gathering of Israeli troops. The incidents tested a partial ceasefire agreed on Monday, which Lebanon said would see Israel refrain from bombing Beirut in exchange for Hezbollah not attacking Israel. Israel and Lebanon diplomats held a second day of talks in Washington on Wednesday to discuss ways to shore up the deal. U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio told reporters that he had hopes that they would produce an action plan on a track for security in Lebanon, independent from Hezbollah. Lebanon was drawn into the war between the U.S., Israel, and Iran on the 2nd of March when Hezbollah launched rockets into Israel in retaliation for an Israeli strike that killed the Iran supreme leader. Israel responded with an air campaign across Lebanon and a ground invasion at the south. The U.S. brokered ceasefire between Israel and Lebanon on the 16th of April failed to stop the fighting, and last week, Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu ordered the Israeli military to intensify its strikes on Hezbollah and advance deeper into Lebanon in response to drone and rocket attacks on communities in northern Israel. And again, so this just follows right after President Trump was on the phone with Netanyahu, and apparently what we heard in the media, according to Axios, we heard that Trump was so effing pissed and that essentially he kept Bibi Netanyahu out of jail. He said, no more attacking Lebanon. And then they came to an agreement. And Israel apparently had said, according to Trump, that they would stop the strikes. But then here today, just 2 hours before this stream began tonight, we have more attacks by Israel on Hezbollah. So again, big story there. At the end of the day, it's going nowhere when it comes to the progress of this war. So again, this is from Al Monitor. Israel strikes near Beirut, intercepts hostile aircraft. So same story. But when we look at this, it's pretty wild, right? So again, at the same time, all after there was allegedly this big phone call that took place between Trump and Netanyahu, where Netanyahu and the Israelis agreed to stop firing on Hezbollah and to really keep the ceasefire going. But it doesn't appear that that's really lasting. And then meanwhile, we also had this story. So yesterday, the IDF seized 4 students from their homes in the West Bank, including 20-year-old American Sama Safi. The Israeli government didn't tell her family or the U.S. Embassy where or why she had been taken and is holding her without charges. America must secure her release now.
Just yesterday, 4 students, all women who attend Birzeit University in the West Bank, were seized by Israeli security forces. One of them, Sama, is an American citizen. Israeli security forces came to her home at 3 a.m. in the morning and just took her without explanation.
This is supposed to be our greatest ally. Israel just kidnapped an American, and at the same time, we're being told on the back end via this new bill that integrates and fuses the United States military with Israel's military, which has never been done before. I'm talking about H.R. 8800, Section 224 of the National Defense Authorization Act. When we look at this, and again, that's supposed to be for the fiscal year 2027. All of Congress wants to pass it, or most of them. And again, meanwhile, we have these things happening where Americans are being kidnapped. So who is really thwarting all of these peace deals and agreements? Is it the Iranians? I don't think so. Is it really Kuwait? I don't think so. Is it really Iraq? Don't think so. Is it Saudi Arabia? I don't think so. It seems to be that Israel, according to what this research tells us and the actions of the Israelis, kidnapping Americans at the same time in Israel, like what's happening? Why is this really continuing on? And then meanwhile, we have Randy Fine. We're going to cover that video as well, essentially calling Tucker Carlson and Marjorie Taylor Greene and Thomas Massie anti-Semites when they're obviously not anti-Semites. They're abusing this word in order to get what they want, which is to secure more power. And that seems to be the very obvious trajectory of all of this. So again, here's more of this video.
She told them she was an American citizen. They didn't care. I talked to her mother, also an American citizen, shortly after all of this happened. She was absolutely distraught. She told me that her daughter has a medical condition that needs treatment. The Israeli government, the Netanyahu government, needs to tell everybody why they seized these students. And our ambassador to Israel, Mike Huckabee, and Secretary of State Rubio, who always tell us that their #1 priority overseas is to protect American citizens, need to make sure that Sama is immediately released.
100%.
This has been part of a pattern. We've seen this happen before. In fact, we've seen
and it's getting worse.
American citizens killed by violent Israeli settlers and by security forces without accountability. This has to change. I am really sick and tired of the Israeli government, the Netanyahu government, taking American taxpayer dollars and then mistreating Americans.
Again, that is one of the more brave congressmen in our Congress today. That's Senator Chris Van Hollen. And again, a lot of these different stories that you see, you have the entire U.S. Congress almost who is in full support of this entire thing. And then meanwhile, as all of this is happening, we have H.R. 8800, Section 224 of the National Defense Authorization Act for fiscal year 2027, which was written by Netanyahu. So crazy to think about. But this was drafted and written by Netanyahu and the Israeli Knesset, basically to be able to steal all of our military technology, our information. And they say that, it's to merge and it's to help both parties. There's going to be reciprocity. But we've seen none of that. And then we have these things happening where Americans are being kidnapped. And again, we also have the USS Liberty that we have to think about. We have to think about JFK and the Israeli intelligence agency's involvement in JFK's assassination. These things are very important to think about when we look at the declassified files that tell us all of this, okay? And so is this really our greatest ally, or are they working against our interests? Who is really continuing this Iran war? Is it really Trump? Or is it really the Iranians? Or is it the Israelis? To me, from my analytical perspective, from an impartial point of view, it does appear to be the Israeli state that's continuing this entire war. And again, American taxpayers are paying for it. So again, here's more on this story. Israel and Hezbollah exchanged fire and new talks in Washington. Again, pretty insane. So again, as all of this is happening,
today,
this is happening
among
in
those
Lebanon
killed
still.
this Wednesday were 2 paramedics in the south of the country. Lebanon's health ministry circulating pictures showing damages to the ambulance. You can see them there, these pictures, though, from the local defense team. Now, the Israeli army also today...
And now we learned that it's actually 9 who died. It wasn't just 6, it was actually 9 from this same incident today.
Hit a car just south of Beirut, although it's not immediately clear
Paramedics
who is being targeted there. Well,
They're
let's go
attacking
live then
paramedics.
to the Lebanese capital, to Beirut. Our correspondent, Renee Davis, with me on the programme. Renee, what more can you tell us then about these strikes today near where you are in the capital and also in the south of the country?
Just after noon today, we heard reports of a strike on the Khaldi road. So that's the motorway from Saida to Beirut. It's very close to the Beirut airport, only about 3 kilometers. What we know is that it was a targeted strike on a vehicle. We don't know exactly who they were targeting. There's also reported
Well,
another
it appears to be the paramedics. We just saw the vehicle. It was paramedics and people who were aiding, I'm guessing, the people of Hezbollah, the people or the regular Christians who are in these villages. Again, we've been seeing a pattern of Christian villages being bombed by the Israelis. This isn't just in my opinion. This is what I've been seeing from tracking the ground warfare and maritime analysis, everything we've been seeing. This is what we've been watching on the NASA satellite footage and feeds. All of this is documented to be true. These are Christian villages that are being attacked and bombed by the Israeli government. And then on top of that, they're saying that, oh, we're defending from Hezbollah. But Hezbollah appears to be protecting these Christian villages from what their perspective is.
injury. And we've just been seeing repeated targeted strikes all throughout the morning and the afternoon. The Lebanese army just denounced a deliberate attack on one of their soldiers and an officer in the car in Deir Sahrani in southern Lebanon. Like you said, rescue workers also targeted in an ambulance in Shuhair in the Tyre district. Now, these were rescue workers from the Al-Risala Scouts. So that's rescue workers affiliated with the Amal party, in alliance with Hezbollah, but not to be confused as the same party. They are separate. Whose leader, in fact, Nabi Haberi, is also the parliament speaker here in Lebanon, only a few days ago said that he would personally assure that Hezbollah signs a ceasefire as well. So we've seen repeated strikes all throughout Lebanon. There's also all throughout southern Lebanon. There's also another strike that killed 6 people, 4 Syrians and 2 Palestinians. Also, Hezbollah launched rockets on Israeli soldiers. The Israeli army also announced that they intercepted rockets coming from Lebanon onto Israeli soil. So all of this is happening, all this escalation. Meanwhile, talks are taking place in Washington.
Indeed. So this is the 4th round of direct talks between Israel and Lebanon, Renee. What's your sense as to what the impact will be of those strikes you were just telling us about those Israeli attacks on Lebanon, on the talks happening in Washington?
Well, after the past heated few days we've had where there were threats on Beirut, Donald Trump came out saying that there would be no attacks on Beirut, that he's spoken with Netanyahu.
Right.
However, strikes have been continuing in southern Lebanon. Now, what we know from the discussions is that they're set to talk about a possible 60-day period where the Israeli army would withdraw from southern Lebanon, and the Lebanese army and UNIFIL would take those strategic points. Hezbollah is supposed to withdraw north of the Litani River, so that's the river that cuts off southern Lebanon, and also discuss their arsenal. So
Oh,
there's
they're
a
going to
lot
keep
to
going
unpack.
northbound. I think that the Israelis are going to continue forcing northbound into the territory of Lebanon. They want not just Lebanon, but they also want Turkey. They've said that. That's been on record. We've had Ben Gvir of the Israeli Knesset. We've had Prime Minister Netanyahu of Israel say the same thing. They don't just want Lebanon. They actually want to, in Netanyahu's words, use the Gaza model. And so the same thing that you're seeing in Gaza and everything that you've seen be done in Gaza, they want to do the exact same thing in Lebanon and then eventually Turkey. And I think what we're seeing in Ukraine is very much very similar.
We'll have to wait to see what the comments are after these negotiations this afternoon.
So again, big story there. At the end of the day, they don't want you knowing about that. And we're not supposed to talk about that because Israel is allegedly our greatest ally. But when we look at these videos, it seems like nobody's really listening to President Trump, despite him trying to push these peace deals, which I really believe that Trump is trying to push these peace deals. I just believe at the same time, it does appear that he doesn't have the power or authority over Netanyahu that he thinks he does. And this interview really encapsulates that. So take a look at this.
Axios reported that you had a phone call with Bibi Netanyahu, the Prime Minister of Israel, in which you were angry with him. You said, "Are you effing crazy? What are you effing doing? I helped you stay out of jail." Is that
Trump
true?
looks so tired. Look at how tired Trump looks. He almost looks like almost the side of his face is kind of like drooping. He looks stressed. And here we need a president who's going to stand up against Netanyahu and Israel.
Did you speak to him in those terms?
I did. I wouldn't say angry. I was a little bit perturbed at his constantly fighting with Lebanon. You know, at some point I said, Bibi, we got to stop this. We got to stop it.
He's so afraid of Netanyahu. Why is Trump so afraid of Netanyahu? Is it because of what's in the Epstein files? Is it because of the pager threat that he gave Trump right after the pager incident where Hamas was essentially assassinated? Their entire team was killed by this pager event. And again, after this pager event, Prime Minister Netanyahu, he was given a key to the White House by President Trump. And then on that same date, or very close to that, Prime Minister Netanyahu gifted President Trump a golden pager. What do you think that means? Very interesting. So it's like, who knows, but maybe Trump is actually scared of Netanyahu and what is potentially going to happen. You know, again, what happens if Trump stands up to Netanyahu? Well, we saw what happened when JFK tried to stand up against Israel having their own nuclear program and America funding that. 6 months later, he was killed. So very interesting connections that we have to make, and not trying to be conspiratorial, but it is interesting to say the least, right? So we also have Iranian strikes on we also have Iranian strikes on the Kuwait International Airport, which we're going to cover here. So again, what to know about the Iran war today. Kuwait said on Wednesday that the Iranian missile and drone attack hit its international airport, killing one person and wounding dozens more, as the ceasefire between Iran and the U.S. looked increasingly fragile after yet another exchange of fire. Iran claims it launched a retaliatory attack on U.S. military bases in Kuwait after another set of airstrikes by American forces, which Central Command called self-defense strikes on Iranian military positions. Before the latest exchange of fire, President Trump on Tuesday denied reports by Iranian state media that the regime in Tehran had suspended its indirect negotiations with the U.S. over Israel's ongoing war with Hezbollah in Lebanon. Mr. Trump insisted talks were going on continuously. Israel and Lebanon agreed Wednesday to renew their fragile ceasefire and to create a number of pilot security zones in Lebanon where Hezbollah would be banned. So again, very interesting to say the least when we look at this story and where everything's going with this war. Again, here's some footage of that I'm going to show you now. When we look at this footage of the Kuwaiti International Airport here, this is, again, June 3rd, 2026. This footage released this morning. And so why would Iran attack the Kuwait International Airport? Why Kuwait? Well, you have to understand that Kuwait has been assisting the Iranians in this entire fight. Okay, so the Kuwait, not assisting the Iranians, Kuwait has been assisting the United States, the UAE, and Saudi Arabia, as well as Israel in this fight against Iran. They've taken the side of America and the United States against their brethren, which is how the Iranians see all of these other Gulf states and Arabic states. They see Saudi Arabia, Kuwait, and they see Iraq, they see all of these countries, the UAE, Oman, they see these countries who are essentially fellow Arabs. They see them as brethren. So they see betrayal. And so that is why they are attacking a lot of these airports. Also, these airports are also, of course, transporting U.S. military, and there's a lot of logistics happening between these airports. So attacking these areas, of course, makes sense if you're the Iranians. So you have to, from an open source intelligence platform, you have to be able to really identify why the Iranians would be striking Kuwait in what appears to be their own Arabic brothers, okay, across the Red Sea. But ultimately what we're seeing is not only betrayal from the Saudi Arabians, from the UAE, from Oman, from Kuwait, they're seeing, and again, even Syria, the Kurds, right? We're seeing a real betrayal, but also, again, a lot of U.S. military bases and military logistics move between these destinations that you're seeing being struck. Okay, so again, here's another piece of footage kind of showing us what happened the same night. So again, when we look at this story, that's a fact. Okay, I go back. So when we look at this entire thing, again, this is footage from that exact strike. Pretty crazy. Raw dashcam footage captured multiple bright streaks lighting up the night sky as Iran launched fresh missile and drone attacks on U.S.-linked targets in Bahrain, Kuwait, Saudi Arabia, and the UAE. Explosions, intercepts, and chaos on the highways. This is escalating in 2026 for the Iran war, which is unfolding in real time. Is this the spark of a wider regional war? So again, when we look at this, pretty wild. So again, all of these were different drones and rockets and missiles that were struck towards, again, Kuwait, Bahrain, Saudi Arabia, and the UAE. And essentially, not only for harboring U.S. military and our own assets, but also because of the betrayal, again, against the Iranians, who really are fighting for their sovereignty and independence when we look at all of this. Okay, and what's interesting enough about Tehran and Iran and where you're seeing being attacked by Israel and the United States, these are Christian areas. So again, very interesting to say the least what's happening here. You can see the FPV drones that are flying and shooting from this area. So again, huge story, big developments overnight last night, and this war is only cooking up. At least 23 were killed in a Russian attack. Ukrainian president says new assault is possible. So again, this also happened overnight. This was June 1st, 2026, just 2 nights ago. But again, we covered a little bit of this footage. At least 23 killed in the Russian attack. So Putin was warning against this attack for days, basically saying that Kiev would be struck because of essentially all of this continued war, Zelensky continuing to ask for money from the United States and its proxies. Again, the United States is using Ukraine as a proxy to fight Russia. I think we can all understand that and identify that. Ukraine had warned there would be a big Russian attack. Zelensky says intelligence suggests new attacks are possible on Tuesday. Again, that happened. Kiev and Dnipro among cities that came under fire, and Russia says it attacked defense industry facilities. So again, Russia pounded Ukraine with hundreds of drones and dozens of missiles early on Tuesday, killing 23 people and wounding 130, and President Vladimir Zelensky's said Moscow could launch a new launch for the second time in a row. The strikes on cities including Kiev and Dnipro followed Russian warnings of systematic attacks on the capital after a drone attack on a dormitory in Ukraine's Russian-held region of Luhansk last month. Kiev denies targeting the dormitory. So again, ultimately, it's really interesting when you see all of this happening and developing. Okay, so here's more footage on that. This is when the Russians had attacked Kiev the other night. Russia on fire. Russia's missiles strike freely as Ukraine's Patriots run dry. Explosions rock Kiev at night as Russian missiles hit with no resistance. Zelensky admitted it. Ukraine's Patriot interceptors are completely depleted. Putin's forces are pounding the capital while the West's stockpiles are drained. Notice that it says the West's stockpiles because we are the ones funding it. the American taxpayer is funding this entire war against Russia right now. And we've been funding it from the beginning, thanks to Lindsey Graham and the China hawks and the Ukraine and the Russia hawks that believe that Russia is the problem here. When really, Russia is not the problem. We should be allied with Russia. They should be on our side. Okay, the Russians are the second greatest nuclear superpower on Earth. There's no reason that we should not be allied with them, personally, in my opinion. Again, the source from those videos are from the Times of Ukraine and the Real Kiev, localized media in that area. But again, it doesn't stop. As Putin's Davos opens, St. Petersburg residents fear more Ukrainian strikes. So again, today, there was St. Petersburg that was also struck by the Ukrainians. Okay? So again, we had the Russians who struck Kiev 2 nights ago, and then tonight, or overnight last night, we had essentially St. Petersburg, Russia, which was attacked. And this comes right before the Davos summit. And also, Candace Owens is there. I believe Tucker Carlson was there. And we're seeing a lot of different influencers who are going to be, I think it was speaking with Putin and having some kind of interviews with Putin. So very interesting to say the least. So again, when we look at this story, pretty crazy. Here's the footage of that. And again, you can find all of these YouTube shorts on my channel, Ecker Geopolitics. Be sure to subscribe and like if you're getting good information here. But I've been covering the wars that are happening around the planet and all of the global conflict. But again, in this video, we're seeing what you're watching is 2 FPV drones, and they're striking essentially an oil refinery in St. Petersburg. Ukraine just hit one of Russia's biggest oil terminals in St. Petersburg with a long-range drone strike right as St. Petersburg International Economic Forum kicks off the Davos summit. Huge flames and thick black smoke billowing over the facility, a major symbolic blow deep inside Russia, 1,100 plus kilometers from the front. Zelensky called it part of a long-range sanctions on Putin's war machine. So very interesting. And where are they getting this intelligence? Where is Zelensky getting this intelligence and this money? Because he's so smart and a great entrepreneur? No. He's getting all of this funding for this war from the American taxpayer overall, which the United States Congress is forcing to continue going on with. So pretty horrid and horrific when we look at that. So these are some big stories that have been developing over the night, over the past 24, 48 hours or so. Huge. And then President Trump also made another big move today. He is putting over $300 million into law enforcement, which is good. I think that's very good. I think we need that. We do need to have more law enforcement. We do need actual law and order in America, in the United States, in this country. No doubt in my mind about that. We have too much injustice in this country. We have too many criminals who are just free to let loose, rioters in the streets. And again, they're not even proficient rioters. They're like, you're seeing teen takeovers. You're seeing radical leftist takeovers, people who were celebrating Charlie Kirk's death. The same people are out there today attacking ICE agents and federal agents completely against the law. And there's just lawlessness. They're not even protesting for a cause, a lot of these people. So again, I do believe in this movement that Trump is doing right here.
From the very first day I took office, our administration has waged the most successful war on crime in American history. Last year, the murder rate saw the single largest decline ever recorded, falling to the lowest level in 125 years. We've reduced the fentanyl coming across our border by 60%, from Washington to Memphis to New Orleans to our southern border. We are restoring law and order to America. Now we're taking our next big step to defend public safety in America. At my direction, the Department of Justice is beginning what we're calling the Model Cities Initiative to slash violent crime in major metropolitan areas all across our country. In selected cities, the Department of Justice will provide $300 million in grants to hire police officers, modernize equipment, provide training, and improve law enforcement. This historic funding will go to confronting substance abuse, preventing youth crime, and combating repeat offenders.
Yeah, and we have a lot of this happening in Los Angeles. You have a lot of this happening in the streets of New York City. You have Austin, Texas today, which is completely overrun by drugs today. You have Portland and Seattle. You have all these different cities today which have been overrun by this woke mind virus. And at the same time, we also have a huge, massive drug problem. You have syringes in the streets of West Hollywood, California, And again, we can only hope that Spencer Pratt wins this entire mayor race for the city of Los Angeles. We kind of need that. And at the same time, there needs to be law and order. There does need to be more funding for law enforcement rather than defunding law enforcement, because you need to have safe communities at the end of the day. And again, because if you don't, you're going to have everything you saw during the BLM riots, everything you saw, have been seeing, everything you have been seeing with the teen takeovers. We've been covering that on this show. We've been covering all of these protests happening by illegal immigrants, again, radical leftists, all of these kind of, subgroups that are Soros funded, and they are bringing complete crime and complete chaos and anarchy, right? You have Antifa and all these different, sub-terrorist groups that you could identify them as. Yeah, these things need to be handled. You must have law and order in a government if you want to have a strong government. So I definitely agree with this. I'm glad that Trump is doing this, and I do think we need more of this. We need more of people in Congress. If we're going to spend $300 million, I think this isn't the worst thing to spend it on.
In short, we're committed to making historic investments in improving the quality of life of city residents nationwide. For the next 90 days, any city or local government representing a population of more than 100,000 people can apply to take part in this exciting new program. It's amazing. Tell your local representatives to apply now by going to www.justice.gov/grants. With your help, we will put more police on our streets, and we will put dangerous criminals behind bars where they belong, and we want to keep them there. Thank you very much.
And so, again, a lot of people will say that this is a tyrannical move by Trump and that, he wants martial law, he wants more police out there. And not necessarily. I think this is more because of what we're seeing with these, again, mass migration is flooding not just the United States, but also the UK, all of these European countries. Okay, we have, again, Germany, Ireland, Scotland, we have Spain, we have Sweden that are being overrun by Somalians and Pakistanis and Indians. And you have all of these third world immigrants who are coming into these countries, first world developed countries, and they're wrecking them. And they're leaving trash everywhere. This is all happening. This is not my opinion. This is facts. Okay, we watch these videos every day, and if you think I'm lying, or even if YouTube were to say that I was lying, well, then that's just not true. You have to go on Twitter X, and you have to actually see these videos for yourself. You have to see all of these places with your own eyes. And if you were there, you would understand it. Okay, so this is what Trump is really fighting against. He's fighting against the lawlessness, the Antifa, the BLM, these radical leftist Soros-funded groups that are really trying to tear down society, that are, threatening ICE agents and threatening to take their lives, which is completely unacceptable. None of these things are okay. So there does need to be law and order if we seek to have a powerful empire, which we do. At the same time, we also have some more negative things, in my opinion, that are happening, because we have Representative Randy Fine and Matt Brooks, the CEO of the Republican Jewish Coalition, and they spoke yesterday, and Randy Fine was talking very poorly about Thomas Massie, Tucker Carlson, talking very poorly about Marjorie Taylor Greene, and falsely labeling them what they perceive to be anti-Semites. And this is not true. These individuals are not anti-Semites. They are Christians. And if you are a Christian, you are not an anti-Semite. If you are a Christian and worship Jesus Christ, who was a Jew, how can you ever be an anti-Semite? This is a word that has been abused by not all Jewish people, of course, but it is being abused by members of the higher classes of these organizations and these groups like AIPAC and the Republican Jewish Coalition. They're getting together and they're falsely labeling, true American patriots as anti-Semites because they're criticizing the war happening in Gaza and Lebanon and a lot of these illegal takeovers that are kind of unacceptable and going behind the back of the United States when we are the ones paying for it, when American taxpayers are paying for this. Okay, so this is the real issue here. And if you say that, these same individuals will call you falsely an anti-Semite, which, to be clear on the record, as I'm making this YouTube channel, I know that this is a sensitive topic. I don't see myself as an anti-Semite. I believe everybody has human rights and human dignities, but at the same time, you cannot call true American patriots who are God-fearing Christian people anti-Semites, which is a word to label them as somebody who hates the Jewish people, which is not true. Okay, and it's a word to not just slander somebody in the ballpark of hate, but also it's labeling them to be something that is completely unacceptable to society. And, you're really just destroying their reputations in general. So I think this is a horrible thing of what they said. So take a listen to this.
I served with two anti-Semites, Marjorie Taylor Greene and Thomas Massey. One we got to quit, and the other, thanks to all of you, we beat.
So this is not true, though. They're not anti-Semites. You can't say that they are.
And we're very, very lucky. Whereas Democrats 20 or 30 or 40 years ago had anti-Semitism show up in their party, and they minimized it, and they said it was the fringe, and they didn't deal with it, and it took over their party. The leader of our party said he wasn't going to deal with that. We often say that Donald J. Trump is the greatest friend that Israel's ever had, but that doesn't go far enough. Donald J. Trump is the greatest friend American Jews have ever had, because he stands up and he fights for all of us.
Over the past few months, the RJC spent more than $5 million to defeat Thomas Massey.
And remember, that was actually about $30 to $32 million in the entire piggy bank of how much money was spent to make sure to unseat Thomas Massey from the Kentucky GOP gubernatorial. Okay, so it was $30 to $32 million that was spent to unseat Thomas Massey if you consider ad spend and a lot of these different campaigns that were being run on television for these mostly boomers that were watching all of this and ate it all up and believed that this Abigail Rain was this patriot when he is the one who wants to send your kids to war in Iran. He's the one who wants to send your kids to fight and die in Iran for a war that means nothing to the United States and means everything to Israel. And they all clap. Are these really Americans?
And let me say very clearly
really
tonight,
it
was a fight worth having and a victory worth celebrating. When someone repeatedly undermines support for Israel, traffics in isolationism at a moment of global danger, and refuses to stand with the Jewish state when it matters most, there has to be consequences.
There has to be consequences. What? Who are you? Who do you think you are? No, you're not the superpower here. The United States is the superpower. If it wasn't for the United States, there would be no state of Israel today. If it wasn't for America, ever since World War II, fighting for the Jewish sovereignty of the Jewish people, there would be no Israel today. There would be no Balfour Agreement that allowed the Palestinian state to essentially split into an apartheid so that Israel could exist. There would never be any of that without the United States jumping into the war in World War II and joining the side of the British, and then again, eventually taking on the Germans and the Russians, the Europeans, the Soviets, all of these different factions of other fellow Europeans in order to secure the sovereignty of the Jewish people. And now today, they are telling us, oh, well, that means nothing. That never happened, and it's not important. And, you're an anti-Semite if you say anything that questions the state of Israel at all, no matter what we're doing in Lebanon or Gaza, no matter how many people we've, killed illegally, and no matter how many illegal settlers we have in those areas, we are going to inflict consequences upon you. And it's quite horrible. It's definitely un-American, and they don't sound like Americans when they talk like that. It doesn't seem like they want to participate in the American economy, our American system, this thing we have here. Doesn't seem like they want to be a part of it. So that's just kind of my interpretation on that matter. So again, this clip was originally, I found it on X, and I had said that these people are never getting power again, and they know it. The younger generations are awake to Israel's lies and slander. To call Thomas Massey and Marjorie Taylor Greene anti-Semites is just plain anti-American, which is far worse than anti-Semitism. They are finished. I mean, honestly, in that context, meaning this is, they're really never going to have power for much longer at this rate when they continue this kind of behavior, when they continue slandering true patriotic Americans who obviously are not hateful towards the Jewish people, nor am I, by the way. But you can't just slander everybody, a hateful person, and expect to get some kind of reciprocation back in return. And, it's kind of just bullying, if you ask me. And they're spending they have their money and their donors, and they're using all of that to essentially unseat anybody who doesn't fit the Israeli agenda. This is why everybody is saying that America is a occupied, country today by the Israelis. This is why. So this kind of behavior it's just highly unacceptable. So yesterday, June 2nd, 2026, highlights from Marco Rubio's testimony in the Senate Foreign Relations Committee hearing. I wanted to outline some of these clips here on what Rubio had to say.
Billions of dollars of reconstruction costs just to get to where they were.
Mr. Rubio, you keep telling us how we're winning this war. The president keeps saying,
well, the war's over
completely
now.
Annihilated. The war is not over. And yet the American people see how we're losing at the pump.
This is the clip where Marco Rubio had said the war is over, but it's not over, right?
To where they were.
Mr. Rubio, you keep telling us how we're winning this war. The president keeps saying,
well, the war's over
completely
now.
Annihilated. The war is not over. And yet the American people see how we're losing at the pump and with their costs, and yet this thing still hasn't been resolved. Every day he tweets out, oh, we've obliterated them, we've annihilated them, they're going to surrender. But yet we still find ourselves spending billions of dollars a week
Senator
on
Booker,
war abroad.
Our foreign policy is one that's solely focused on the national interest of the United States of America, on the defense of our country, both its military defense and our security, but also our economic security and the vibrancy of our economy, our sovereignty, and our future. We believe that America should lead the world, and I believe that we are, and we'll have a very good story to tell about that. American leadership, however, should always be on behalf of the American interests. I say this because I think over a period of time in our foreign policy, we lost focus on that. The reality of it is that our foreign policy, first and foremost, must always be what is in the national interest of the United States of America. And determining the national interest oftentimes requires us to make pragmatic decisions. Sometimes in foreign policy, the choices are not between a good choice and a bad choice. It's between two less than ideal choices, and you're trying to figure out which one of these two choices is the one that is best for the United States and least harmful to our interests. And that plays out every single day. That said, we remain the world's sole global superpower, the most powerful country on earth. We have the largest economy. We have the most...
By the way, I believe that most likely, no matter, whether you like Marco Rubio or not, I predict that Marco Rubio will likely be the next president. And if it's not Rubio, obviously, perhaps it could be J.D. Vance, but I don't see that happening, to be honest. I do see it being Marco Rubio. I think he will actually end up running. He will probably win in 2028, at least at this current rate, if nothing changes. If there's no course of change in what we're seeing today, I do see Marco Rubio becoming president, most likely. Again, I think he's actually quite intelligent, pretty good guy, pretty smart. At the end of the day, a lot of people aren't a fan of him because they believe he's been kind of bending over for the state of Israel. But again, in terms of globalism, a lot of people don't like him because of that. He is a globalist. But at the end of the day, he's also, developed some interesting foreign policy deals that have made America a lot of, pretty powerful moves. We've actually made a lot of money because of these deals we've made with the Indo-Pacific and the Philippines with AI data centers, building them there. I like that we're building them there, kind of keeping them there. We're putting a lot of these AI companies over there only because it allows us to bring in a lot of that revenue and we control that territory. And so if we're talking about global dominance, then not a bad idea, not a bad trade-off. He's also done a good job with Sudan, which is right off the border of the Red Sea. You have to understand we have to have the Red Sea if we want the Strait of Hormuz. Rubio understands that money, that the millions of dollars that unfortunately we have to give to Sudan in order to secure that border of the Red Sea, or right on that borderline of the Red Sea from Sudan and again from in between Saudi Arabia and Sudan, you'll see the Red Sea there. We kind of need that territory. So with the aid that we've provided to that country, it has allowed for a lot of benefits in that aspect. So there is a lot of benefits to Rubio and his foreign policy and diplomacy and his international deal-making skills. But at the end of the day, if we're talking about keeping money at home in the United States, then this is why a lot of people aren't really a big fan of him.
Formidable and powerful military, ever known to man, by the way. Our dollar remains the reserve currency of the world. Our language is used extensively throughout the world to transact all sorts of business and many of our engagements. But all this means very little if that power is not used to protect the people who built it, the people who it is meant to protect. I also remind everybody the United States government is not a charity. We are not here to play social worker. We are here to win. We are here to win on behalf of the American people and on behalf of the national interest, to win for our country, to win for the people of America, to win for the things that are important for our future. And that's what we exist to do. The State Department exists to carry out the foreign policy of the United States, both in diplomacy and in aid, in a way that furthers the national interest and helps the American people. And it's guided every decision that's been made since January of 2025. When you have countries in this alliance, because understand, at the end of the day, we are providing basically the defense backbone of an entire continent of rich countries. These are not poor countries. These are rich countries. And the utility of NATO for us is that it provides these basing rights. Now we are living in a world in which some of these countries, I point to Spain as an example, openly brag about how they've denied us the use of these bases. And so if the core rationale for us being in NATO, if what we get out of NATO is the ability to use bases, and then we have members of that alliance that are basically denying the use of those bases in a contingency, it calls them to question the entire thing. AI will have very positive impacts on our economy and societies.
So this is where I really disagree with Rubio here, because I think a lot of these AI data centers, they're building them here in the United States as well, and that's not really good for America, right? Here in Michigan, in Saline, Michigan, we had Sam Altman, who just gave a whole speech and a spiel, and he's basically sued the state for not allowing him to build his data centers here in Michigan. And so it's like basically right near Ann Arbor. And Gretchen Whitmer's all on board for it. Again, if you're living in Michigan, you understand what I'm talking about. But these AI data centers are going to destroy a lot of jobs, like he's about to say here, and it doesn't seem like Rubio really cares too much. And this is where I'm not a big fan of Rubio. This is where I really disagree with a lot of what he's saying and this entire strategy. I think there's going to be a very small, limited GDP that comes out of these data centers. This digital tech space. And again, a lot of our, now again with HR 8800 section 224 of the National Defense Authorization Act, it's going to basically allow Israel to have this kind of integration and fusion with our own military. And so now they're going to have access to top secret clearance. They're going to have access to top secret military weaponry, classified documents on innovations and projects that we're doing. Very dangerous things, keys to the castle, essentially. And so not good for the United States. And at the same time, what happens when Israel is controlling our data centers too? And basically our entire cyber grid. Not good at all. We have no more sovereignty. We have no more independence, no more economic independence at that point. And so this is where I disagree with Rubio here.
It will also have some detriments. There will be white collar jobs in this country that will be impacted. And I think we have to start thinking not simply about the impact that AI will have on those jobs, but the societal pressures that will create, not just in the United States, but in economies all over the world. Much like industrialization and automation did, it will make the worker more efficient and more valuable, but it will eliminate some jobs, and those jobs will have to be replaced with new jobs or new skills.
White-collar
That's not
jobs.
just an economic issue. That is a political issue. That, over time, could destabilize societies all over the world.
Yeah, 100%. Because, again, our economy was built off of building and manufacturing. Now, all that manufacturing is done in China and all these different countries. So this is the issue with globalism and why it doesn't work forever. You need to have independent sovereignty. You need to be building, businesses and enterprises in your own country, on your own soil. Otherwise, when it gets outsourced, those other countries own a little bit of you now. And so the more you lose that independence, like China, they're pretty much a fully independent country almost. They have deals with BRICS and all of that, but ultimately China has a lot of sovereignty over their own manufacturing. They're building, they're producing things. And America used to be like that in the industrial age with during the times of Henry Ford and all of that. And so that's kind of what we're losing. So again, this is Trump's UN ambassador sanctioned, talking about how he sanctioned the anti-Israel UN boss. And again, more of the Israelis and the Zionists who are going out of their way to kind of smear the reputations and slander all of these people who are not hateful of Israel. They're just criticizing a lot of these strategies and war strategies that we're seeing happen today with Lebanon and Gaza. People are criticizing that, and they're being called anti-Semites.
And has been and is a cesspool of anti-Semitism. And under President Trump,
not true.
There is no more turning a blind eye, period. We are going to use our voice, our vote, our money, and what leverage we have. So, I won't elaborate on too much of what you see out there, but what I do want to tell you is what we're doing about it. Well, number one, anti-Semites that call Israel a stain on humanity, like Francesca Albanese, are now sanctioned. Number two, organizations like UNESCO, we've backed out of. We're no longer funding. UNRWA, we are going to dismantle and are in the process. The so-called Human Rights Council that has the likes of China, Cuba, Venezuela, and others on it, we are no longer participating in. And I think most importantly, on the Security Council, we have vetoed time and time again 6 by resolutions by my count just since October 7th, measures that are completely, absolutely, and only targeted towards our best, and I would say, and absolutely the most democratic ally, the only democratic ally in the Middle East, Israel. So we are using our money, we are using our voice, we are using our vote, and we are going to take this on and fight and block and tackle at every turn.
So basically, in my opinion, I think this kind of behavior is what is going to isolate the United States, right? Israel is basically latching on to the United States They are going to integrate with our military via H.R. 8800, Section 224 of the National Defense Authorization Act of the fiscal year 2027. This is all going to take place next year. And these data centers are now going to be fully controlled by the Israeli state. Your Apple iPhone 17e and up is going to be controlled by the Israeli state. The microchips and a lot of the microprocessors going to be built in Israel, developed in Israel, and they're going to have control over a lot of the entire cyber grid of this country. And then on top of that, not just our classified documents in our country and all of our things, all of our stuff, but also all of our deals and all of our allies. And then over time, as our dollar dies, as the U.S. dollar dies, and as the Israeli dollar goes up, and of course, as we continue giving billions of dollars to Israel every single year at the American taxpayers' expense, this country essentially has no more value. This country, the United States, eventually is no longer even united because everybody's at civil war because nobody has money. And there's no more economic independence or sovereignty or prosperity. These things will go away. And then the worst thing that can happen after that is that because we have no value or no more money, all of our allies leave us. And because of these wars, these endless wars that we're getting into, like the Iran war and getting into this Lebanon war that we are going to have to partner up with now and fight with the Israelis, according to H.R. 8800, all these countries are going to basically not want to work with the United States anymore. We're going to lose our allies, and the Israelis are going to be the trade superpower of the Middle East. Not only will we not control the Strait of Hormuz, as we are no longer doing, which we had control over before Netanyahu got us involved in this war, all of these things are going to destroy the entire U.S. economy and our entire hegemony. All of it is going to really be very destructive for the future of the United States. And so that's kind of why you have a lot of sentiment against the current state of Israel right now and the strategies of what you're seeing. So some other big news. This is from the Clash Report on X. Germany failed to win a UN Security Council seat for the first time in its modern history, receiving only 104 votes. Portugal and Austria were elected instead. So again, this is really for the an entire operation to unite these countries. So again, it's kind of like the UN when you look at this.
Number of votes obtained: Portugal 134. Austria 131.
So again, this is again for like the World Commission of Other Groups, WCOJ, or the WCOG. And when you look at this, that's basically what this is.
Germany 104.
So for the first time, Germany essentially does not have a seat. Okay, so they'll be able to jump back in later, but this is all voted upon, and because of essentially Germany and their current leader, who has been very siding partially with Israel for a long part. This apparently, from my research, is why they were kind of put out of this. So again, this is the Western European and Others Group. The WEOG gets 2 seats. Elections require 2/3 of the majority, at least 128 to 129 votes out of the 193 members, depending on the exact turnout. What happened today? In a rare 3-way race among strong EU candidates, Austria, Germany, and Portugal, for the 2 WEOJ seats, starting in January 2027, Portugal had 134 votes, Austria had 131, and Germany had 104, well short of the threshold. So Germany was eliminated in the first round. The winners, plus the other Kyrgyzstan and Zimbabwe, as well as Trinidad and Tobago, will serve 2027 to 2028 on this council. Historic first for Germany. Unified Germany had won all 6 previous bids, most recently from 2019 to 2020. This is a rare loss in a competitive field. Diplomatic embarrassment. Germany is Europe's largest economy, a major UN funder, and a big contributor to peacekeeping. The loss signals weaker support than expected, especially from non-Western or global South countries. So the possible reasons cited in the reports are that this was because of backlash over Germany's strong support for Israel amid the Gaza conflict. And then another reason potentially was for the competition from capable EU peers, Austria and Portugal, running strong campaigns, as well as the timing and broader perceptions of German foreign policy in entirety. So again, it's a blow to the current governments under Chancellor Merz. Global ambitions. Germany has pushed for UNSC reform, adding permanent seats for itself. India, Japan, and Brazil. Losing a temporary seat weakens that momentum short term. So essentially, in my opinion, I mean, it's not really the worst thing for Germany because their current leader for Germany is highly, he's very pro-Israel. He puts Israel above the German people. He's very Israel first, not Germany first. So maybe it's not the worst thing. Okay, but ultimately, that's kind of a big story there. So we also have the maps, and we're going to look at all of this. Let's see what else is new. Let's look at the news in the Strait of Hormuz. What's different from yesterday? So again, everything's always about identifying patterns. So it looks like we still have the blockade in effect. You can see it very clearly right here. We have a lot of these ships still clustered in these and highly congested in these little areas, anchored down, as you can see from the red dots here, these crude oil tankers and chemical tankers, these LNG and LPG tankers, all clustered in these little areas. And again, mostly for this blockade. You're not seeing flow-through access of this Strait of Hormuz. Then, again, you also have a blockade over here by Qasem Island. At the same time, we also had reports of a lot of attacks happening on Qasem Island. So, again, when we look at all of this, hold on, I gotta make sure we're not frozen here. I think we're good. Just gotta check, though. All right, we're good. Bahrain, you'll find a lot of U.S. military bases. So, again, right in this area here, we're getting there. My laptop's a little glitchy. We have Qatar here, who is a big financier of the United States. And this entire war. Then there's Bahrain over here, which was attacked yesterday. Okay, so we're seeing a lot of strikes happen in this area by the Iranians, inflicting this kind of pain onto, again, Bahrain and these other areas. Karg Island still seems to be unoccupied, so there doesn't seem to be a lot of action over here. The Iranians seem to still have that under control. When we look at these vessels, typically, they're Iranian vessels or proxy vessels. Yeah, see, Iranian vessels, multi-purpose offshore vessels. And a lot of the times they'll use fishing boats for these attack boats. We have a lot of clustering here in the northern Persian Gulf. So again, that tells us that, again, insurers are still feeling very risky about continuing any kind of trade in this maritime area. We still have traffic going north to south in the Red Sea. The Suez Canal, it seems like there is more traffic than we were seeing yesterday. So this is actually kind of reassuring. So again, it does seem like there's a little bit more traffic than we've been seeing in this area. So we have limited traffic. There is still traffic, but it's limited. But Port Said seems to have a little bit less congestion than it has in the past couple weeks we've been tracking this. Okay? And again, it's important to look at all these different ports because that's where a lot of this trade it's where you can basically tell the story, right? So we also have Israel, a lot of traffic and trade coming into Israel. But then we look north into Lebanon, right around Beirut, very limited trade, very limited activity where the Israelis have been trying to occupy this territory. Southern Lebanon and the Golan Heights up to Nabateh, from the western side of Lebanon, which is mostly Odessa, right where my cursor is, and then to the eastern side where Tyre is. And then we have Nabateh, again, just right near those Golan Heights. Then, of course, we have Cyprus, where you'll have a lot of EU and American trade routes going in there. So that's where a lot of that trade is happening right now. Again, we also have Singapore. We also have Sri Lanka and all these other areas. And then, again, you see this congestion and this traffic on the southern tip of Africa. We've been tracking that. We still see a lot of it. Okay, right near this Cape of Good Hope, you're still seeing a lot of crude oil tankers being forced to go around the southern tip of Africa all the way up and around back to Europe or to Spain, where all of these different areas are. And again, remember what Marco Rubio said, we're basically being denied any kind of U.S. military bases to be placed in Spain. So what does that tell us? There's going to be less congestion in those areas. So again, very interesting to see how these things are developing, right? So again, when we look at the flight tracking, we're always checking what's the biggest flight being tracked of the day and what people are really looking at. So again, you got to wait for it to load because everything needs to take forever. Again, be sure to like, share, comment, subscribe as we wait for this. So again, we have two military flights from Tel Aviv. This looks like a U.S. Air Force C-130. So again, why are they flying in circles? That typically just means that these are refueling patterns. So when you see these circles being flying, again, this is essentially signs of refueling over that area. But the question is, why are they over this area? Because this is restricted airspace right where my cursor is, right? So again, just north of Fujairah, this area, just right where the Strait of Hormuz is pretty much restricted airspace, where Ras Al Khaimah, or Kalma. So Ras Al Khaimah, this area is pretty much restricted airspace at the moment. But seems to be that we still have UAE aircraft, we still have Israeli aircraft, and the U.S. Air Force over the skies of the Strait of Hormuz and all of these different areas. Qatar, of course, you'll see a lot of traffic in Qatar, but the traffic is still moving over that Strait of Hormuz in the Persian Gulf. So there is still air traffic despite the air traffic restrictions. Very interesting. So ultimately, who knows what's happening? But again, it seems like we have more movement going northward into Europe. And then that tells us that there could potentially be more strikes to come. So whenever you see flights heading northbound from north of Saudi Arabia into Europe like this, these little patterns, you'll see these lines of planes. That typically tells us that there's logistics and military movements potentially being done. So again, we'll see what happens with all of that. But very interesting to say the least. So again, when we look at all of these stories, it's quite interesting. So what else do we have here? We also have the markets. So again, I wanted to analyze the markets and kind of how this is impacting oil prices and the cryptocurrency market. Cryptocurrency has not changed much. Crypto seems to be crashing at the moment. The fear and greed index is super low. People are feeling pretty fearful in the market right now. It's at 24 right now. Bitcoin's at 64,570. Ethereum is at 1,819. And XRP is at $1.20. So we're doing really bad right now in the crypto market. So really bad. But at the moment, again, we are still waiting for that July 4th markup date for the Senate Ethics Committee hearing, where they will be talking more about the Clarity Act. And hopefully, if that passes unanimously, it will go to the president's desk. And hopefully before that, or before August, at least at that point, they're saying August is potentially when we'll see the president be able to sign that. Again, we also have the Save America Act, which is kind of interrupting the entire Clarity Act from being passed. A lot of interesting things that are kind of happening at the same time. It's all about that Senate floor time, and that's what they're kind of fighting for, and the rights over that right now. But Trump said he wants that Save America Act signed first into the Senate. So that's why a lot of people are saying it won't be till August until Trump is able to even do anything for the Clarity Act, really. Meanwhile, we also have the oil prices. WTI crude is at $95.81. Brent crude is at $97.81. Merben crude's at $97.17. And natural gas is up at $3.24. So when we look at those prices, again, the oil prices are staying right under $100. But ultimately, the more this war heats up, and if this market does end up crashing soon, which a lot of analysts are saying that it could, then these oil prices are going to skyrocket, potentially up to $180 to $200 a barrel. So if you're following these markets, don't be afraid to invest in these different energy assets. Okay, CNBC anchor issues dire stock market warning. I can assure you we will have a crash. Sorkin Flatty states a crash is inevitable, warning that market confidence can vanish instantly and no one can predict the timing or depth. Sorkin compares today's market to 1929, calling the AI boom either a gold rush or a sugar rush, with no clarity expected for years. The S&P 500's PE ratio sits at 29x, near dot-com bubble peaks, making exposure to defensive assets worth considering alongside staying in the rally. The analyst who called NVIDIA in 2010 just named his top 10 AI stocks also. So again, when we look at all of this, pretty big developments. The bears have been quiet in the last 2 years, even though the market is much more frothy by their standards. And at this point, who would want the perma-bear tag while the rest of the market keeps on climbing ad infinitum? So very interesting. Again, and then the gold markets today. Gold is sitting at $4,459.65 an ounce, while silver is at $73.30 an ounce. So the markets are pretty much neutral at the moment, and they're watching what's really happening with this Iran war. That kind of determines the course of everything right now. Okay. Meanwhile, we also have this big story. Albanians should not oppose American investments in Albanian lands. On the contrary, we should do everything possible to encourage and attract American investments, not only to the area, but also for others of means. The investment by President real Donald Trump's daughter, Ivanka Trump, and her husband, Jared Kushner, on Sazan Island is a great project that will promote economic development, encourage other international investors to explore opportunities on Albanian lands, create new jobs, and open new doors for our young people. It will also contribute for the young, long-term security and stability of Albanians throughout the Balkans. So a lot of people are opposing this. Jared Kushner and Ivanka Trump just bought this island near the Sazan Islands, and they essentially they said they swam here, and I have a whole story on that. Maybe we'll check that out right now. Where's that short? Well, again, let's watch that, and this will give it some context. So again, here's the clip of Ivanka talking about this specifically, talking about this island. It's going to be really, it's kind of interesting to see where this is all going, to be honest with you. But when you look at it, I think it's going to be maybe not so good. Okay, so I posted this short on my channel. Again, follow us, watch the YouTube shorts. I post a lot of YouTube shorts updating you on what we're going to be talking about the next day on these live streams. And this is an incredible project, according to Ivanka Trump. But here's some more context. This is a $1.62 billion luxury resort on Albania's protected Sazan Island near the Vernik coast.
Incredible project with my husband in the Mediterranean. It's massive in scale.
I think that's an understatement. Can you explain?
Yes, it is.
There's no power on this island. You're building everything from scratch. Correct.
Well, it's an unbelievable, beautiful 1,400 hectare private island in the middle of the Mediterranean. We were on a friend's boat and we stopped for a swim. Effectively, that's how we found it. We swam to the islands. We went on a hike barefoot all the way up to the top, and we were just captivated. And it stayed with us ever since. And over the course of many years, we developed the opportunity to help realize its potential and transform it, but with a lot of restraint and care, because the land is so beautiful that.
And what you're seeing here is footage of this island, of that real estate being attacked by the Albanian people.
It's not even a business for me, despite the scale of it. We not only the island, but we have 5 miles of beachfront directly across from the island, this beautiful peninsula with a lagoon on one side, the ocean on the other, beautiful white sand beaches. For me, it feels more like a challenge than anything else. The culmination of all of my experience in real estate, all of my travel, a lot of reflection on how I want to live, how I think people increasingly.
Again, that's video footage of a protester. So again, what you're seeing here is footage from just this month. Protests arrested as disputes over land reclassification backed by the Albanian PM Edi Rama. So this is a protester that's being dragged off and arrested.
Manifestation of that requires a lot of vision, the collaboration of some of the greatest masters that exist. So I was just there walking the lands, really just trying to sort of be with it and experience it alongside some of the greatest living architects of our time, like true masters of their craft. People with integrity so absolute, like there will be no compromise. And that's something we want to create there. So we're very excited.
So again, really huge, because again, why is everybody fighting against this? Well, again, this is Albania, and this specific island has endangered species. It's been protected from basically not allowed for anybody to buy it. But the laws were changed by the Albanian government specifically for the Kushners and the Trumps to basically acquire this island. And again, they paid $1.62 billion for this luxury resort on protected Sazan land, endangered monk seals, rare wildlife, and EU protected zones under the threat as locals claim their family land is being seized. 41 environmental groups from 28 countries are sounding the alarm, backed by PM Edi Rama, but at what cost? This is ecotourism or environmental takeover. What do you think? Ultimately, it's like, seriously though, is this luxury standards? Is this the standards for the luxury kind of investments that you just need to be okay with this? Or is this kind of a hostile takeover? You know, maybe it's a little bit of both. But ultimately, it's kind of interesting to see how it's all developed and to see where this is going. Jared Kushner had already offered a lot of money, basically, to any billionaires who wanted to live there and, you know, reap the benefits of that island. So very interesting to say the least. So now let's look into some of the things I had bookmarked. AGC CEO Ted Deutsch and he basically said, this is an anti-Semitic threat of Tucker Carlson and Candace Owens being taken seriously enough in the GOP. Senator Dave McCormick said there is a rise on both sides. Nicholas Fuentes is a good example. We cannot sanction in any way. So think about this.
But I don't think we
kind of weird.
Have
Why is all of this happening? What is with all of this calling Americans anti-Semites? Here we go again with attacking Tucker Carlson. I just don't understand where this is coming from. This is like this is anti-Americanism. And being anti-American is way worse than anti-Semitism, by the way. That's way worse. To hate America and to hate Americans, it's like we're kind of the reasons that, you're allowed to continue arguing about anti-Semitism, quite actually. We're kind of the reason that you're allowed to fight against anti-Semitism is because of the United States fighting for the Jewish people in World War II all the way up to today's time. So I don't really want to hear it from the Semites that these people, Tucker Carlson and Marjorie Taylor Greene, Nick Fuentes, Candace Owens, anybody who's actually questioning the state of Israel, anybody who's against this entire war with Israel, no, you're not going to call us anti-Semites. You're not going to give us your perceived labels of what you think somebody is because you don't like what they're saying. I'm not going to call somebody an anti-American if they criticize the American economy. I'm not going to criticize somebody and call them an anti-American because they criticize the way that we play football versus, Europe. I'm not going to criticize them and call them anti-American. No, I'm going to have the conversation. I'm going to listen to what they have to say. I'm not going to call somebody an anti-Christian because they have a problem and a few different flaws with the history of Catholicism or Christianity. I'm not going to call somebody an anti-Christian for that. But this I see as anti-Christian for sure, because it's like when you're attacking good people who are honestly just doing their jobs as journalists and they're being independent, they're saying what they want to say, which is the freedom of speech in this country. This is the First Amendment. Again, whether you like it or not, it's true that facts don't care about your feelings, in the words of Ben Shapiro, a Jew. So I'm going to use the words of Ben Shapiro. Facts do not care about your feelings because it's true. This is the First Amendment. We have a right to say what we want. And if it is not in the context of hate, which is to, again, in Tucker Carlson's context, or Candace Owens, or Nick Fuentes, or Marjorie Taylor Greene, again, where these people are questioning the state of Israel, right? Thomas Massey, they're questioning the Epstein files and who was in those Epstein files, why these people seem to have all these connections to Israeli intelligence and all these things. That's not anti-Semitism. That is called being an American. That is called being, exercising your First Amendment right in this country to ask questions. But suddenly, anybody who asks questions or builds any kind of argument for, some people would call it, true war crimes that are being done in Gaza, war crimes that are being done in Lebanon. Some people would call it that. I would potentially call it that. And, those people are being called anti-Semites. And again, these people are Christians. So how can you call a Christian who worships Jesus Christ, who was Jewish, at least in their words, according to the Bible, right? How can you call a Christian an anti-Semite when their God is Jewish? So maybe these people are a little confused about what their actual religion really is.
Within the Republican
Listen
Party,
to
is
this.
there a serious enough acknowledgement that the threat posed by voices like Tucker Carlson and Candace Owens, influential figures who spread anti-Semitic conspiracy theories, that those are being taken as seriously as they need to?
Well, listen, there's certainly anti-Semitism on both sides, but I don't think we can have
Like, how much money are you getting
we don't
paid
have
to
any people
just
in
say
the
that?
Republican Party that are running for office with Nazi tattoos on
Going
their
there
chest,
next.
right? And with mainstream Democrats going to Maine to campaign for Graham Plattner. So I do think that this problem has really gained traction and become a very significant part of the Democratic Party. But as you say, there is a rise of this on both sides, and so Nicholas Fuentes is a good example. And when he's speaking out, I'm saying, no, that's not part of my party. That's not part of my values. That's not someone I want to have to Thanksgiving dinner, and we shouldn't platform those voices as well. But I would differentiate between social media, where there's certainly a lot of that, and what's happening on the ground. And I think This is the kind of thing where we cannot sanction in any way. When we see evidence of anti-Semitism, whether it's on our public schools, whether it's on university campuses.
See, they love to throw around the word anti-Semitism, but they never are able to actually define it. Okay, the anti-Semitism is the hatred of the Jewish people and the Jewish state. The hatred, pure hatred, which is evil. Okay, and these people don't hate the Jewish people. Nick Fuentes does not hate the Jewish people. Tucker Carlson does not hate the Jewish people, and nor has he ever said that, nor have their actions ever suggested that. What they have done is they've questioned the current state of Israel and their war crimes that they are committing on Lebanon. They are dropping white phosphorus bombs over the skies of Lebanon, Christian villages, right now, currently. This is happening. And white phosphorus literally is sulfuric acid. Could you imagine acid rain falling down right above in the clouds of your own hometown, right above your head, and this is sulfuric acid falling above you? Okay, this is hell these people are living in. Okay, could you imagine being a starving kid in Gaza, asking for water and being treated like a cattle? Kind of horrible. I would say that is more hateful. That is more anti-Semitic, given the fact that the Palestinian people actually do have more Semitic DNA than a lot of the different Ashkenazi Jews who are living in Israel today. You know, a lot of these Arabs have real Semitic DNA, and they've been there for thousands and thousands of years since the time of Christ, since the time that he walked this earth. So very interesting to suggest that, you know, when you look at what this entire thing is, this seems like a Trojan horse to crush the freedom of speech and to crush the First Amendment, obviously. And anybody who would argue that, maybe you're working for these same people who are maybe not real Jews, but you are using this as an excuse and a lever to silence any dissidents so you can keep on this war and profit from this war. It's kind of my analysis on it.
Whether it's in our own party, we have to speak out strongly against it.
Yeah, and we already do. We do speak out against hate and all of that. You people seem to be more hateful towards anybody who are asking questions. So again, this is Representative Randy Fine saying that Hassan Piker should not only be banned in the UK, but also in the US. I kind of agree with this. Hassan Piker is kind of an anti-American. He's also an animal abuser. He's a radical leftist. He is somebody who would have, his same followers, Hassan Piker's same audience, were the same people who were cheering for Charlie Kirk's death. Totally radical leftists. The same people today who are fighting ICE, completely unhinged, completely unlawful, and, you know, just terrible people a lot of the time. And so Hassan Piker, again, communicating with the Cuban government against American interests. Listen, you know, you're allowed to communicate with who you want, but at the end of the day, it is interesting to note that he's going over to Cuba. He's, you know, having these conversations with a country that is a communist country that we're currently at war with, and not to mention that the country of China uses Cuba as a proxy to attack America. So is he really an American? If he's giving is he giving intelligence to the Cuban government, which the Cuban government will then give that to the Chinese government, which is happening. The Chinese is giving aid to the Cubans. And listen, they're only giving aid to the Cubans. Yes, I know, because the Cubans don't have energy right now. They don't have a lot of electricity. That's why you're seeing that happen. I'm not opposed to that. But the thing is, it's like, this is pure treason. Okay, and Hassan Piker is somebody who he has spoken out against, like, you know, very common sense things in this country, which, again, freedom of speech. But what are your thoughts on it? Kind of an interesing debate that I've been seeing online.
How are you? I'm fine. How are you?
I'm not a fan of Randy Fine, by the way. I'm not at all. Again, this guy is completely an anti-American, and I think he's been speaking against the interests of most Americans. But is Randy Fine right for this, or is he wrong for this?
See you.
Nice to see you.
Pretty hot today, huh?
You know, it's not so bad. It could be hotter. That's why we're walking outside.
That's true.
But it's warming up, that's for sure.
Hey, I was interested to
Watch out, don't run into that.
Thank you. I was interested to get your take on Hassan Piker not being allowed into England.
Well, I don't think he should be allowed into America, so I think that's a good start.
What about freedom of speech?
Well, people have freedom of speech, but I think when you're a terrorist, you should be held responsible for that.
So I think this statement's so interesting, though. When he calls Hassan Piker a terrorist, I disagree with this. You can't just label somebody a terrorist, because one person's terrorist is another person's patriot, and another person's patriot is another country's terrorist. You have to understand the psychology of terrorism. What is terrorism? Terrorism is the political motivation for any kind of radical movement. And again, there is money involved. You're making a profit. There is a religious fanatici behind it. So ultimately, is it terrorism? I wouldn't say so. I wouldn't say Hassan Piker is a victim of terrorism by any means. But at the same time, this is somebody who has spoken against the interest of America and has led to a lot of these radical protests and these radical leftists destroying our cities, burning our cities down. And he never stood by and said anything bad about it, never condemned his followers for it. And these were the same followers who were cheering for Charlie Kirk's death after he was shot and killed brutally in front of his children, in front of his kids, in front of the whole world. And Hassan Piker had nothing else to say but, oh, well, that's why you don't be a right winger. It's like unbelievable. And so now he's being subpoenaed in Congress. We'll see what happens. But ultimately, I'm not against Hassan Piker being subpoenaed. I am against him being labeled a terrorist, though, because ultimately you do have a freedom of speech in this country. We can never just ban people for the things they say.
I think that he's clearly a supporter of terror. He's a walking billboard for the problem with birth tourism. He was brought here by his Turkish family. They had him, and they took him home, made him hate America, and then sent him in to torment us. The guy's a horrible human being, and I wouldn't let him into my country if it was up to me, so I don't blame them.
Look, I mean, maybe your opinion, but like he's not a terrorist. He says some stuff that you disagree with, and I think banning him from a country is like pretty crazy step for someone who's just expressing their opinion.
It's up to them. They don't want him in. I wouldn't want him in either. And by the way, they're allowed to do that.
They're allowed to, but I mean, freedom of speech is just a huge issue. And if you're going to start banning someone just because you disagree with their views, then
Absolutely.
Where does it end?
Totally
He
true.
promotes Muslim terror, so I think they're making the right decision by not taking that. I'm surprised they did it, but I think they did the right thing.
Okay. Thank you, sir.
So it's kind of an interesting slippery slope issue here, but I still thought it was interesting to say the least. What do you think? I thought this was funny. This plays like a scene from The Office. Who's telling him to do this stuff? Like anyone cares how big the pool is.
Within the Republican Party, is there a serious enough acknowledgement that
They just had this done. You're getting the first glimpse, but
This does remind me of the scene from The Office. I never watched the
those
show.
Are compared to, those are among the tallest buildings in the world, including the Empire State Building, World Trade Center,
Would be kind of cool, though, actually, I guess.
Sears Tower, Chicago. So if you lay it on its side, you'd take 2 or 3 of them to fill it in, because the width is almost 200 feet wide. They just had this stuff.
Interesting. I still thought it was kind of funny. But at the same time, what's wrong with having a long and powerful Lincoln Memorial pool? I think it would be kind of neat. Again, we covered that. Israel go away. Our land, Albania, is not for sale. Mass protests erupted in Albania after part of Albanian territory was sold to the USA and Israel. So again, really interesting here. This is the uprising against Melania Trump.
threat posed by...
So this is, again, the protests that have been taking place in Albania to protect the Albanian land from Ivanka Trump and Jared Kushner. And this entire, what appears to be a takeover, the entire Albanian government changed the law just so that the Trumps could come in and buy this, or you could say the Kushners. Pretty big. People are not okay with it. I mean, again, this is sovereign land with endangered species animals, and now it's only going to be blocked off to the rich, essentially. So that's another problem with this entire thing, is that apparently this is only supposed to be a hub for the elites and the powerful and, entrepreneurs and really successful entrepreneurs and billionaires. And so if you're not one of those things, then you're not getting in. And so that's kind of why the people of Albania are coming around and they're saying, hey, this is our land. It's been our land forever. You people just come along and you're just going to block everybody else out now? Like, interesting. But that is kind of what's happening with that situation. And again, this is a letter from Netanyahu to Congressman Stutzman revealing his plan to restructure the entire U.S. military relationship in his own words, my plan. The time has now arrived for us to move from aid recipient to partner. The framework draws down on U.S. financial military assistance over the next decade and to replace it with joint defense cooperation, co-development, co-production, and mutual investment in advanced missile defense, artificial intelligence, unmanned systems, cybersecurity, and next-generation military platforms. On the surface, this sounds like Israel wearing itself off American money, but read it again. Aid is a line Congress can cut with a vote. What replaces it is structural integration, shared weapons development, joint production lines, entwined AI and cyber programs, mutual investment in each other's defense industries. So again, this is all Netanyahu's idea when you look at this. So pretty crazy. This was his drafting of this. So very, very interesting. We have to say no. Any congressman who would be okay with this is definitely working against the better interests of the United States of America, in my opinion. Sean Strickland was forced to say sorry and apologize for his anti-Israel sentiments and his statements apparently that have been being made. He's not allowed to fight at the White House, so this is what he had to say to it.
And I'm well, you got it.
So again, this is a mass censorship operation. When we look at all of these different stories, this appears to be a mass censorship operation by the Israeli people.
I'm not surprised, but I got the call. I got the call. The UFC higher-ups called me, the big names. And they said, Sean, I got to apologize, but you're not Israeli enough to go to UFC 250 Israel edition. The White House didn't clear you. And I'm not really surprised, I'm not really surprised. So, I think moving forward, I would like to just apologize to Israel. I'd like to say I'm sorry, I'd like to apologize to Trump.
Isn't it sad that he has to say that? Like, people have to apologize all the time for nothing, really. Nothing that they've done wrong at all. And they have to apologize for opinions they've had or for jokes they've made or for things they've said about the state of Israel or questions they've asked about the state of Israel. And they're forced to apologize if they want to be in the public limelight, if they wanted to be in the public eye, if they want to be at the UFC 250th anniversary of the White House. That's horrible. This is a great UFC fighter. He's an American everybody loves. And because this guy had cracked a couple jokes about Israel that everybody laughed at, even Jews laughed at it. And suddenly the Jews are like, oh, well, you're not allowed at the White House. It's like, who are you to decide? This isn't your country. You are, honestly, you are occupying our country right now for a temporary time. But it's like, who are you to say that, again, Sean Strickland can't go to the UFC all because of some statements or jokes made?
I just want to prove that I'm
harmless
Israeli
jokes, by
enough
the way,
for
non-hateful jokes.
For instance, whenever the list disappeared and Trump goes out there and says to everybody that he can't really go into it because people that by association will get prosecuted and their names will be tarnished. I want to apologize because I don't want them to be prosecuted. Or when Trump goes and bombs the fuck out of Iran that no Americans agree with, that cost Americans $5,000 to $15,000 to go fight Israel's war, I want to apologize. Sorry, I've been a critic of that. My allegiance was apparently in the wrong place, and I just want to apologize. Or when Trump goes out there and says, "Hey, Trump, your approval ratings are the lowest it's ever been across all demographics," and Trump says, "Well, you know what? I have a 99% approval rate in Israel. I want to apologize and I want to repent. Apparently, I'm not American enough to go to
the humiliation ritual that they make these stars go through.
I still got my ticket, so maybe we'll just go. I'll bring the bell and we'll just stand outside the gate and we'll just let them know what we really think about Trump and Israel.
Honest to God, again, this is a dude who made really lighthearted jokes. This is not a guy who made hateful jokes towards the state of Israel at all. None. None. This is a guy everybody loves him. Everybody loves Sean Strickland. And I mean, even his opponent, who he just defeated, can't remember his name. They literally broed out. They hugged out. They're buds. Everybody loves Sean Strickland. And it's oh no. Well, the White House says you can't go because you made a joke about Israel. It's unbelievable. And it was a totally harmless, good-hearted joke. It had no bad intent behind it. So again, this is from Thomas Massey. The Iran War Powers resolution that I co-sponsored opposing the war just passed the House of Representatives. The People's House is sending a message, end this war. So again, people are happy with Thomas Massey. Again, maybe he'll be the president one day. Who knows? Maybe he'll be the president one day. Meanwhile, let's check in on our two-tier justice system. Let's convert locks to machine guns, post the evidence all over their personal Instagram, and Republican-controlled AFTHQ does absolutely nothing. Or ATF-HQ does absolutely nothing. Firearms laws optional depending on the skin color. Yeah. So again, I gotta mute that because I don't want to get copyright. But look at this. So again, where's the ATF at? The ATF will pull over a regular, ordinary guy going back home who's a former Marine or whatever. That Marine will put his hands on the dash. He'll roll those windows down. He'll make that traffic stop as easy as possible for the police officer. But that police officer will write him up for anything that has to do with the smallest firearms violation. And then you have this going on. How come there's no justice? I bet none of these guns are registered. I bet all of these guns have no serial numbers on them, probably scratched off serial numbers. Again, they're flinging around all their watches and stuff that's probably stolen. Crazy. Illegal weapons, some of them look like. It looks like an AK-74 Mini U. Yeah, you have automatic firearm pistols here that I'm seeing. You have these clips and magazines that suggest that. So again, they're allowed to do that. They can do whatever they want, two-tier justice system. But the ATF, they're going to come after you, that normal former Marine and, good-hearted guy, whoever you are. You come home from work, you got a weapon in your car, whatever, and they're gonna throw the book at you because you're an easy prey. But not these guys, because they're in the city, and so no laws apply to them. We need SWAT. We need law and order. This is why it is a good thing. This is why it is a good thing that Trump is spending $300 million on law enforcement. In fact, I think we need way more than that. Law enforcement needs way more money to take care of this kind of problem. There's just no acceptance for this. There should be no tolerance for this. Again, that shouldn't exist. Again, I'm sure none of these weapons are legal. I can almost guarantee it. Again, looks like there's probably no serial numbers even on these. These are automatic firearm pistols. And so again, you can tell by the clips, the magazines. So again, they got their money that they probably stole. So crazy to think about, but they can do whatever they want because the ATF is apparently scared to do anything about it. $300 million to law enforcement, maybe not such a bad thing, Trump. Seriously. Because that's who that money will be used to go and get.
Because I believe the Bible.
U.S. Ambassador to Israel Mike Huckabee, citing his belief in the Bible, the Schofield Bible, describing himself as an unapologetic Zionist, and defined the occupation and politics as a divine mission.
Have created outsized impact on the world.
So again, here's the
I want you to know I'm
beginning
not
of
a Zionist because I'm Jewish. I'm a Zionist and an unapologetic one because I believe the Bible.
Schofield Bible. The Schofield Bible, which was changed in like 1972 specifically to allow and enable for what you're seeing today.
And because I recognize that Jews around the world, representing only 0.2% of the world's population,
it's probably much higher than that,
have created outsized impact on the world. And unfortunately, there are people who hate you for that. But I've determined that
hate. Why is it always hate with these people? Why do they just think everybody hates them? It is specifically designed to create some kind of uprising among their people. It is designed to motivate and inspire and to make these Jews believe that they're actually hated. And it's like what creates the animosity and what creates all of this resentment towards the Jewish people is this kind of talk. Calling everybody anti-Semites completely out of line who are not anti-Semites, calling Tucker Carlson, Marjorie Taylor Greene, Nick Fuentes, Candace Owens, Thomas Massey. You're targeting these people, calling them anti-Semites, and for what? Because they're questioning the state of Israel. Unreal. And so they get to call those people hateful people and anti-Semites, and they use this word as a Trojan horse to crush any kind of dissidence or freedom of speech.
they really, more than they hate you, they hate the God who chose you 3,800 years ago as his people and gave you a place called Israel and gave you a purpose which was to present the law and the light to all the world. You being faithful to that task is not simply something that you should do. It is something that you must do. For there's no one else to whom
the creator of the universe has given such a mission.
Okay. Yeah, right. The chosen people are the Catholics, actually, the Christians, and those who believe in Jesus Christ, who is the truth, the way, and the light. And honestly, that is the way it should always be. That is the message that should be sent. The chosen people, according to the New Testament, are those who believe in Christ. And that's the whole point of the New Testament. The Jews believe in the Old Testament, which is the Torah. The Jews study the Torah, which is, again, a version of the Old Testament of the Bible. But even in the Old Testament, it says, or really in the New Testament, when Christ is crucified, he says that I am the new way, I am the truth, the way, the life, and those who believe in me and those who abandon me will, what's the quote? If you abandon me, Jesus, if you abandon me, then I will abandon you and I will forget your name. But if you remember me, then I will honor your name. The chosen people are those who believe that Jesus Christ is the way, not the people who crucified him. And so that is the misconception of the Jewish people today. Ben-Gvir posted a video complaining about the volume of Islamic call to prayer blasting from the mosques. Enough, that's it. It's no longer possible to sleep, he says. Can't really deny this. I kind of agree with Ben-Gvir on this one. Again, I disagree with the Jewish people on most things today, according to what they say, but I agree with this. This is ridiculous. The Muslims have their 5 a.m. call to prayer. That is ridiculous. Like, you cannot bring that into a first world developed country and think that that is okay. Like, seriously, I kind of agree with this whole video. I mean, honestly, Muslims need to cut that out. You can't go over to a sovereign country that is completely the opposite of you, pray in front of their churches, burn their churches down, turn them into mosques. You can't do that. You can't have your 5 a.m. call to prayer bothering everybody in the whole town when nobody wants to assimilate to that, when it's their country and you're trying to change it. Not cool. It isn't right. So I kind of agree with the Jewish people on that one, with Ben-Gvir on that one. Meanwhile, Russia now produces 15,000 FPV drones per day. In 2023, it would take an entire month to produce this amount, said Deputy Prime Minister Denis Mantrov. The special military operation made drones an independent strike force capable of wide-range tactical tasks. So again, this is the biggest form of warfare today in 2026, I'd say, when it comes to World War III and everything we're seeing. Okay. And ultimately, that's kind of where we're at. So again, you look at some of these other videos. National security threat in New Jersey. We are being conquered. Jahidi Adam Hanway just received the Democratic Party in New Jersey 12, and terrorists plus their defenders are celebrating. So again, this is New Jersey. Does this look like New Jersey to you? And this is who apparently just won some position of political power. Yikes. We're losing our country really fast. If nobody gets a little bit more identitarian, and if you don't become more nationalistic and prideful of America, then the people who hate America will come in and take over. And I don't know if they hate America, but it seems like they hate America enough to want to change it into something else, into a place that they came from. These police officers don't think about these things. They just defend it. They think nothing about it. They're all okay with it. Crazy. Insane. Yikes. I don't see a single actual American there. Like, where's the white people? Where's the Christians? Oh, I don't think they're there. Anyways, next story. We told you they denied it. Now the U.S. has confessed that the UAE and Kuwait initiated attacks against Iran. Marco Rubio goes on there. And this is the dystopia you've all wanted so badly. Facial scanning security robots ready to patrol AT&T Stadium during the FIFA World Cup in 2026 in Arlington, Texas. So again, these are face scanning robots, and you'll be seeing more of these. Again, they started with Boston Dynamics. Yep, you can see it on the device here, Boston Dynamics. DARPA helped develop a lot of this technology, the Defense Advanced Research Projects Agency. And now you have these little robot dogs, and everybody thinks they're so cute. They make them cute so you can adapt to the robots a little bit more, right? They got to start you off soft and just say, oh, yeah, get these human beings to believe that these robots are like dogs. And maybe they'll have these things as their pets, and then we can collect even more data on these humans, even though we get all the data from your Wi-Fi centers. Insane. So this is the world we're living in. Welcome to 2026. Welcome to the iRobot future. It's all happening. New video footage from Monday's night large-scale Russian drone attack and missile attack against Ukraine, which killed at least 23 and wounded over 100 civilians, showing several 3M-22 Zyklon hypersonic cruise missiles striking the Ukrainian capital of Kiev. So again, this is just 2 nights ago. And this is why Zelensky ended up making the strikes against the oil refinement in St. Petersburg today as retaliation. So the Ukraine war is going on because the United States is funding it, and because Lindsey Graham is funding the war. And the Russians are really just trying to secure their own sovereignty. The Ukrainians started this war, and meaning the United States, who uses Ukraine as a proxy. And this is what happened. This was Kiev, Ukraine, just the other night. So the Russians, and again, the Russians literally warned about this 3-4 nights before. They said that this was all going to happen. So, you know, when you look at that, something to think about. So that's all we're going to look at today for today's episode. Be sure to like, share, comment, subscribe, and be sure to, again, support the show. Again, if you want to work with me, you can work with me at Gold Shark Media AI. Start a 7-day free trial at goldsharkmedia.com. Work with me if you want to become a real estate agent yourself. I'm also a real estate agent. Then sign up for Pass RE USA, 1,300 plus practice questions for the state licensing exam. It's relevant for all 50 states. And so no matter where you live, no matter which state, you can take this and it will help you train yourself to pass the state licensing exam. Okay, it's $99. You pay for it once and you have it forever. It's not a monthly subscription. It's a one and done. So a lot of people have liked it. A lot of realtors have used it, and it's worked for them, and it worked for me. I use this to pass my own real estate exam. And again, do it because you got to make more money, especially in 2026. We need to be making more money, right? Especially in a time where there's always recessions, you need to make money. And then lastly, if you want to work with me, you want to invest in Michigan real estate, call me up, Brendan Ecker. You can click the link in the description below. And again, Brendan Ecker Realty with eXp Realty. And again, I will help you if you're real net leases in particular. I really focus more on that. So again, more commercial properties. Again, triple net properties. You want to buy a Starbucks. All of those things I can definitely help you with. But I can also help you with acquiring your first multifamily, your first duplex, triplex, your first quadplex, okay, or your first single-family residential. No matter what it is, I can help you out, but I do like to focus more on commercial real estate. But again, come to BrendanEckerRealty.com, fill out the contact form, or schedule a meeting with me via the Calendly link, and we'll talk about what your situation is, what your financial situation is, where you're at in the real estate process, the buying process, the qualification process, all of it. I'll help you get it all done. So again, thank you for watching today's episode. Be sure to like, share, comment, subscribe. And with that being said, what else do you think is coming for the future of this war? What do you see coming for the Iran war with the state of Israel and the mass censorship campaign that appears to be at play right now? Where do you see all of this going? So again, I have nothing else for you. Stay prudent, stay powerful, and stay wealthy.